Mr. President.
Senator from New Mexico.
Mr. President, I am deeply disappointed by the qualification of President Trump's nominee to be the leader of our Department of Education. Betsy DeVos has clearly shown a disregard, even a hostility for the public school system. So I stand with the thousands of parents, teachers, and students of New Mexico in fighting to stop her confirmation. Simply put, education is too important to New Mexico's children, to our state's economy, to have a Secretary of Education not fully invested in the success of our public schools. As someone who grew up going to public school, who is sending my own kids to public schools, I am deeply troubled by Betsy DeVos's record on privatization, which goes well beyond simply voicing support for vouchers and private school. Ms. DeVos has been a key player in the well-moneyed effort to privatize and siphon funds away from public education, and she has time and again undermined the teachers that we all rely upon. It appears as though Betsy DeVos's most notable experience in education is spending her career and her fortune advocating for policies that divert public tax dollars away from public schools and into private schools. I cannot support a nominee who wants to weaken the kinds of public schools that so many New Mexicans rely on. The privatization policies pushed by Ms. DeVos would be especially damaging to rural New Mexico, where there are few options to begin with. It's not uncommon for students to travel more than an hour to get to and from school in those parts of the state. School administrators often wear multiple hats, sometimes running the after-school program or driving the local school bus. In rural areas in my home state, the public school is often the only choice, and there simply aren't enough students to support the kinds of for-profit private schools that Ms. DeVos wants to replace them with. Having a Secretary of Education who has spent her entire career pushing a privatization agenda is not reassuring to New Mexicans and is at odds with the needs of the students and families across my state. Further, I do not believe that Ms. DeVos understands the federal government's trust responsibility in serving Native American students. Given Ms. DeVos's rushed nomination hearing in the Help Committee, senators were given very little opportunity to question her about her understanding of tribal issues and impact aid. So I'm concerned that she will push her privatization agenda in these areas as well. For example, Zuni Public School District is a small rural district in western New Mexico. Earlier this week, their school board sent me a letter asking that I oppose Ms. DeVos's nomination. I want to take a moment and I want to read a few passages from this letter. Quote, "The beauty of the United States public school system, unlike many in the rest of the world, is that we take everyone who walks through our doors and love every child who sits in our desks without question. This board, therefore, stands by all of our students, no matter what color or ethnicity, regardless of their creed, every child who identifies on the spectrum of LGBT or Q, every child with either a physical or learning disability, or both, every child who speaks a second language, every immigrant child, as well as every Native American child who can trace their lineage in this land back thousands of years, every child who sees their education as the bridge between their most ardent dreams and their most hopeful futures." These are powerful words, and I fully support and thank the Zuni Public School District for speaking out on this matter. We should all be this concerned. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the entire letter from the Zuni Public School Board be included in the record following the rest of my remarks.
Without objection.
During her nomination hearing, Ms. DeVos demonstrated over and over that she is unfamiliar with even basic education issues and failed to commit to uphold the responsibilities of the Secretary of Education to support public schools. Given that Ms. DeVos has no relevant experience as a teacher or school administrator, we should be very concerned with entrusting her to enforce key protections under Title IX, under IDEA, and other civil rights laws. In particular, Ms. DeVos's lack of commitment to the Office of Civil Rights within the Department of Education, combined with the fact that she and her family have donated enormous sums of money to organizations that are anti-LGBTQ, women's rights, anti-Muslim, is simply troubling. The mission of the Office of Civil Rights is to ensure equal access to education and to promote educational excellence throughout the nation with vigorous enforcement of civil rights. During her nomination hearing, Ms. DeVos would not commit to continuing the office's policies that are making our college campuses safer by focusing on prevention and response to sexual assault. In fact, she has donated money to organizations that actually make it harder to prosecute sexual assault on our college campuses. As amazing as that sounds, it is true. If my Republican colleagues rubber stamp this nominee, they will confirm a Secretary of Education that doesn't believe in public schools, who will unravel rural education, and has even worked to make it harder to protect women against sexual assault on college campuses. I believe that we have a moral imperative to ensure that all students have equal protections while attending school. Ms. DeVos will be a massive step in the wrong direction. As the members of the Zuni Pueblo wrote to me in their letter, our children are our most sacred gifts. This is what we're voting on with this confirmation. We need an education secretary who is committed to upholding these principles. We need an education secretary who is committed to ensuring that every student has access to quality education, regardless of their background or their zip code, regardless of their ethnicity or their religion, regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. In the last few weeks, my office has fielded thousands of calls and letters asking me to oppose this nomination. I've heard from more than 8,000 constituents on this one topic alone, many of whom called as parents, as teachers, some as students. That's more than any other Trump nominee that we have considered to date. Never has an education secretary nomination received so much attention and opposition. And Mr. President, I stand with the thousands of parents, of teachers, and of students across the country and in my home state of New Mexico fighting to stop this nomination. And I would urge my colleagues to join me in voting no.